UFC 271 was very keenly looked forward to by the UFC enthusiasts around the world, being headlined by the Israel Adesanya vs. Robert Whittak middleweight title defense bout. With the UFC done and dusted, and Adesanya still the champion, Maxim Grishin, who fought and won in the undercard in the heavyweight division, is now the center of attention, having been handed an indefinite suspension. In today's video, we'll be discussing Maxim Grishin's indefinite suspension and some other UFC news, so stay tuned. Maxim Grishin suspended. Grishin, despite having won the light heavyweight bout against William Knight by a unanimous decision on the UFC 271 undercard, has been suspended indefinitely, according to the directives and suspension issued by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. The TDLR released their medical suspension record after each fight to safeguard the health of participants of combative sports. The 37-year-old initially signed a contract with the UFC in 2020 and has now a record of 2 wins and 2 losses for the promotion. In the opening fight of the UFC, Grishin, on his way to just his second promotional win, went on to win every round against Knight. The bout was originally supposed to be a light heavyweight bout, and Grishin had a successful weigh-in prior to the fight at 206 pounds. But unfortunately, because Knight weighed in at 218, which is the largest weight miss in all of UFC history, by the way, the weight had to be changed to a heavyweight bout. The Russian, though being no newcomer to the heavyweight division, having already competed in it in his UFC debut, proved too much for his opponent to handle. Other than Grishin, Marcelo Rojo was the only other fighter on the UFC 271 card who has been suspended indefinitely by the TDLR. Rojo, competing in the bantamweight division on the primary card, lost to Kyler Phillips by a submission. In the headline fight of the UFC middleweight champion, Adesanya made a record 4th successful defense of his middleweight title, defeating former champion Robert Whittak in a rematch of their original fight in which Adesanya had dethroned him as the middleweight champion. Both of the middleweight powerhouses have been suspended on medical grounds by the TDLR until February 28th following their 5-round fight. Other suspensions at UFC 271. The Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, or the TDLR, handed down the complete list of medical suspensions following UFC 271. These medical suspension lists do not include fighters who are out of action because of any injuries. Adesanya and Whittak are allowed to be back within the octagon by the end of February. The same timeline has been ascertained for Tai Tuivasa and Jared Cannonier, while Derek Lewis and Derek Brunson will have no choice but to take a little extra time away from the cage to recover from their losses that came as a result of knockouts. Some of the results of the UFC 271 and the subsequent medical suspension issued are as follows. In the co-main fight of the heavyweight division, Tuivasa defeated Lewis by a knockout in round 2. This was the biggest win of his UFC career, and following his win, he made the UFC boss Dana White do a shoey celebration. This involves drinking beer from a shoe. Tuivasa faces a suspension until the end of February, while his opponent has to wait until April before he can be in action again. In the main card middleweight fight between Cannonier and Brunson, Cannonier won the bout by a technical knockout in round 2. Cannonier has henceforth, like Tuivasa, been suspended until the end of the month. Meanwhile, Brunson will have to wait until March to be eligible for a bout. In the lightweight division bout on the main card, Bobby Green defeated Nasrat Haqparast with an identical unanimous decision, with all 3 judges showing 30-27, 30-27, and 30-27. Both Green and Haqparast have been suspended until the end of February. Other UFC news. Kevin Lee happy with Eagle FC deal. Despite the fact that his departure from the UFC left him feeling bitter, Kevin Lee has said that it is something he will be okay with, considering the fact that he'll be making almost as much money as some of the UFC champions. Having a record of 18 wins and 7 losses, Lee was released by the UFC, and he subsequently signed a multi-fight deal with the now retired lightweight division legend Khabib Nurmagomedov's Eagle FC. Lee has made the big claim that from his debut fight with Eagle FC against Diego Sanchez, another UFC veteran, he will stand to gain more money than what some UFC division champions bring in. He went on to say that it is common knowledge that just because someone fights in the UFC does not automatically make them the best fighter. He says that there will be guys that are not in the mainstream media but will absolutely batter you. So this is where his competitiveness comes into play, because it urges him to be better than them as well. He emphasizes upon the fact that despite the fact that he is no longer in the UFC and is actually making a lot of money, it does not in any way or form mean that he can just become laid back and relax. He believes it still remains a fight for his life, no matter the circumstances. Lee will be making his debut in the Eagle FC's all-new 165-pound division against Diego Sanchez as the headline fight for Eagle FC 46, and is looking forward to being the one who kickstarts the new weight class and brings it into popularity. The reason for his support for this 165-pound division is rooted in the fact that he had issues with regulating his weight during his days in the UFC, and he had to repeatedly move to and from the lightweight and the welterweight divisions. But considering the fact that he now has that ever-elusive middle ground at Eagle FC promotion, he wants to be the outright face of the division. Joe Rogan, representative to big things in MMA. Joe Rogan, the UFC commentator at one point in time, was one of the most popular persons in the promotion, but times have changed drastically, and as of late, he has almost perpetually been embroiled in some controversy or the other, and constantly under attack and the subject of criticism from fans and other analysts alike. But despite the apparent hard time for the once popular figure, there are still those who have continued to lend their support to the 54-year-old. Michael Bisping, an inductee of the UFC Hall of Fame and a former middleweight champion himself, filling in for the under-fire comedian in the UFC 271 broadcast booth, said that these truly big fights don't feel as such without his presence, and said that his presence is an iconic part of these pay-per-view big fights. According to Bisping, the insights that Rogan presents on these fights are amazing, and it's clear that he knows what he's talking about, while at the same time having the fantastic ability to communicate his insights in such a way as to leave the listeners enthralled. He credits Rogan's charm and charisma for his podcast being one of the biggest ones in the world at the moment. Chael Sonnen, another MMA analyst, had a similar point of view in regards to Rogan, going on to explain what exactly sets Rogan apart from other UFC commentators. According to him, Rogan is in himself a representative of sorts to the big things present within the MMA. He went on to point out that the post-fight interview that is done in the octagon is one of the most difficult things to do, and it is something that no one other than Rogan can do perfectly. Exploring the situation in which the crucial interview happens, Sonnen says that what makes these in-ring interviews hard is the fact that they are painful. The fighter is tired, and even though they do want to say their bit to the world, they're not very excited by the prospect of it. This is where the commentator's key responsibility comes in, as he or she has to guide the interview, and this is something that Rogan is absolutely masterful at. According to Sonnen, in other such interviews, you can see fighters calling other fighters out. Others are getting very emotional, and if it is Rogan who's taking the interview, then it becomes lighthearted, playful, and most importantly, conversational. For Sonnen, Rogan is a leader amongst the rest of his fellow commentators, and that he has an innate skill, something he was born with, and could not teach to someone even if he wanted to. But he, Sonnen, can recognize it. Rogan's prominent absence from the UFC 271 card was apparently due to a conflict in schedules, which, according to Dana White, is total and hence completely baseless. Headlined by the fierce bout between Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal, UFC 272 in early March might be the next we get to see Rogan commentating and providing his fantastic insights on the bouts. But for now, that's a wrap for this video. Will we see Eagle FC's all-new 165 division become a success, or will it fail to win over the audiences? Let us know in the comments down below. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. We'll see you in the next one.